Every city has a moment when it decides whether to vanish or to rise again, and Chicago chose to rise higher than anyone thought possible. Chicago's story isn't just about bricks and buildings, it's about motion itself, the roar of ambition against silence, the stubborn will to begin again. In the early 1800s, it was nothing more than a whisper on the prairie, a thin ribbon of water winding through grass and reeds. The river moved lazily, its banks soft and unclaimed. Mornings began with mist hanging low over the marsh, the sound of frogs, and the creak of wooden canoes sliding between cattails. The smell was fresh wood, smoke, and soil, the scent of beginnings. Traders hauled furs, horses whinnied from paddocks, and small fires glowed along the shore. The nights here were endless and quiet, broken only by the cry of an owl or the splash of a fish. Sometimes you could hear the distant drum of thunder rolling silently through the plains, as if the land itself were dreaming of something greater. This wasn't yet a city. It was a heartbeat waiting to be heard. No one standing here could imagine that this quiet mudbank would become the heartbeat of modern architecture. By the 1830s, change crept in. You could hear it in the clang of hammers, the shuffle of boots, the new rhythm of people settling into permanence. A sawmill hummed through nights, smoke from small kilns drifted over the river, and horses clattered across crude drawbridges that rose to let traders' boats pass. The smell of tar and pine replaced the wild scent of grass. Families built with determination, planting vegetable gardens beside their cabins. Carts rattled with iron nails, brick, and barrels of grain from distant farms. Children's laughter mixed with the deep bellows of oxen. The land was still wild, but now it had a pulse. Each nail driven into damp wood was a declaration: this place will endure. The first post office opened. Streets were drawn on maps, though they were still only trails of mud. Every new structure felt temporary, yet every settler acted as if the city would last forever. That was the paradox of Chicago. It was always becoming something it hadn't yet imagined. The prairie grass bent with the wind like an old secret, watching silently as strangers built their futures above its roots. The nights, once completely dark, began to glow faintly, firelight behind cabin windows, signals of human persistence flickering at the edge of wilderness. By the 1850s, the transformation was astonishing. Ships lined the docks, factories sprouted along the river, and smoke became the city's second sky. Steel had not yet taken over, but the ambition was already metallic. The clang of construction and the hiss of steam powered every conversation. You could walk down Lake Street and see carriages bumping over cobblestones, children chasing dogs, and tired workers leaving the iron mills with soot on their faces and pride in their eyes. At the printing houses, newspapers shouted of expansion, railroads reaching westward, promising a future as bright as the sunrise over the lake. Rice's Theater opened its doors, filling the evening air with light and violin music. For the first time, people gathered not just to trade or toil, but to witness stories. Laughter echoed through the wooden rafters. The city, still small, had learned to dream. The sound of applause mixed with distant train whistles, as if the town itself were applauding its own progress. This was when a settlement stopped sleeping at sundown and started living through the night. But ambition has a price. The city grew fast, too fast. Wooden homes stacked shoulder to shoulder left no space for fire breaks. Streets glistened with oil, and the wind off Lake Michigan could turn a single spark into a storm. Yet nobody paused. Chicago's energy felt unstoppable, a living engine that never cooled. Each new morning brought another factory, another shipment, another dream nailed into place. The population soared past 100,000. The skyline thickened with chimney smoke, and the smell of progress mixed with danger. Lanterns burned late behind shop windows, and restless light flickered off the river long after midnight. And then, one dry October night, the city met its trial. On October 8, 1871, a hot wind spun out of the prairie and met flame. What began near a small barn grew into a cyclone of fire that consumed block after block. Witnesses spoke of burning roofs sailing through the sky, carried by the wind like comets. The streets glowed orange, and the very river boiled with debris. People ran towards the water, some wading in to escape the heat that melted paint and glass around them. Bells rang until they fell, church spires collapsed like matchsticks, and neighborhoods became oceans of ash. Fire engines broke down from heat and exhaustion. The sound, they said, was like the breath of God turned to thunder.
The fire didn't destroy Chicago. It revealed what it was made of. By dawn, the metropolis had become a skeleton. Streets that once hummed now whispered. Smoke hung for days, turning sunsets into blood-red smears across the lake. Yet even before the ashes cooled, the survivors began to rebuild. Merchants opened temporary shops from wagons. Families swept the ruins of their lots and marked corners with chalk for new walls. Architects arrived within weeks, looking at the destruction not with despair, but fascination. The city had been cleared, painfully, but now it could be remade, stronger, wider, taller. The smell of charred wood mixed with fresh mortar, a paradoxical perfume of destruction and renewal. By the mid-1870s, the noise of construction replaced the crackle of fire. Steam cranes swung above bridge frames, barges carried limestone upriver, and new streets cut perfectly straight lines through what was once chaos. Daniel Burnham, young but visionary, shouted his new credo to anyone who would listen. "Make no little plans, they have no magic to stir men's blood." And Chicago didn't. Architects argued about style, workers sang as they laid bricks, children ran through unfinished alleys dreaming of their own someday offices in the clouds. Iron replaced timber, glass replaced soot. The river that once reflected flames now mirrored bridges and warehouses. The city came alive again, but different. Its pace faster, its tone prouder, its silhouette rising higher each year. What was once ashes became blueprint. What was once ruin became revelation. The lesson of survival became the city's pulse. Then came the turning point, the year 1885. From the city's grid of reborn streets rose a strange new structure, only 10 stories tall, yet commanding every eye. The home insurance building looked almost delicate, its skeleton made of iron and steel. People stopped in speechless awe. It wasn't just a building, it was a question answered. How high can a city go before it touches heaven? Below, carriages rattled and distant hog horns echoed from the docks. The sound of modernity was born in those streets. The air thrummed with confidence. This was the day humanity learned how to build upward. The spirit of invention bled into everything. Bridges crank-lifting for ships, elevators rising like magic, electric bulbs turning midnight into noon. Chicago invented the future while the paint of the present was still wet. Along Michigan Avenue, horse-drawn carriages rolled under freshly strung wires. The streets smelled of iron, grease, and promise. Streetlights shimmered on the water like constellations trapped in motion. In the glass panes of new buildings, reflections of smoke mixed with clouds, a perfect metaphor for a city balancing reality and imagination. By night, the skyline shimmered, reflected in dark water like a second city glowing beneath the surface. Visitors called it restless, residents called it home. The tempo never slowed. Factories thundered through dawn, and symphonies played in brand new halls built where ashes once lay. Chicago had learned to turn disaster into motion. Every fire became fuel. Then came 1893, the year imagination became real. On the lakefront, the world's Columbian Exposition opened to a spectacle that stunned the planet. Miles of white palaces stretched along lagoons, their reflections sharp and luminous beneath the summer sky. Over 27 million people arrived to walk through this mirage, the White City. Electric lights twinkled from columns and domes, the first Ferris wheel turned above cheering crowds, and orchestras echoed between marble arches. The scent of roasted peanuts, coal smoke, and perfume from visitors filled the air, a strange blend of industry and wonder. Only 22 years after turning to cinders, Chicago built a wonder so bright the world mistook it for heaven. The fair was more than entertainment, it was a declaration. Every arch and courtyard whispered confidence. Civilization could rebuild itself perfectly. Burnham's design spoke of order and beauty, while the hum of dynamos from the machinery hall promised endless energy. Together, they formed a vision, the power to create, to control fire, to master light. By night, thousands of bulbs shimmered like trapped stars, bathing crowds in artificial daylight. Visitors gasped, some praying aloud, others wept at the sight of man mastering the dark. Chicago had become a mirror of humanity's ambition, its triumph drawn across the lake. Even after the fair closed, its reflection lingered in every modern skyline. The White City had shown the world not stones, but spirit, an insistence that progress could be graceful. As the century turned, trains roared through Union Depot, stockyards pulsed like the heartbeat of an empire, and Chicago stood at the frontier of possibility. Skyscrapers climbed higher, steel bridges arched wider, and people arrived daily, drawn by the pulse of industry and invention. The smell of the river mixed with coal smoke and the perfume of ambition. Artists painted it, poets described it, engineers studied it. Somewhere between soot and sunlight, the modern world found its form. Chicago didn't follow history, it chased it, caught it, and built it into steel. Today, walking between the towers, you can still feel it. The ghosts haven't gone, they merely stepped inside the walls. Each reflection in the river carries memories, the wooden bridges, the burning horizon, the white arcades of the fair. The air hums with everything Chicago once was: frontier outpost, inferno, laboratory of progress. Look upward, and the glass above you holds time itself, a mirror of courage layered into architecture. Look downward, and cobblestones remember the feet that refuse to leave. Chicago's greatness was never inherited. It was forged, hammered, and rebuilt over and over by those who believed that failure was just unfinished glory. At sunset, when light glances off the skyscrapers and turns the river gold, the city seems to whisper its own secret, the same one it told in 1893, that no end is ever final and every ruin hides the foundation of something greater. When darkness falls and the skyline flickers like embers reborn, you can almost hear the voice of the city itself, steady and defiant. Chicago didn't just rise from the ashes, it built the blueprint for the future. And that blueprint is still unfolding, one bright window at a time.